Hi, it's Michelle Marks here with the first video in my series on the elements of fulfillment. In this video series, I'm going to dissect the anatomy of successful and fulfilled living. And by deconstructing fulfillment in this way, it's going to show you how we can each cultivate these elusive experiences in our own lives. And to explain this all, I'm going to use the ubiquitous tree metaphor. So let's hit it. Here's our tree of fulfilled living. I call it the Positivitree. And the tree has a trunk, it has branches, it has leaves, it bears fruit, and it has roots. And for a tree to flourish and grow, it needs to be nourished. Nourishment includes taking in what's nourishing and avoiding poisons, and maybe a little pruning and trimming here and there. So why don't we explore this tree a bit further? And we're going to start with the trunk of the tree, and that's your foundation. It's made of the traits and attitudes that support healthy growth toward a fulfilled and success-ready life. There are 10 traits that when you embody them, meaning when the traits are deeply established in you at the biological level, they're the foundation for fulfillment. And these traits are confidence, focus, resilience, persistence, flexibility, fear resistance, vitality, willpower, equanimity, and wisdom. Now imagine navigating the challenges of life fortified with all of those traits. When we struggle in life, when we don't feel right, when we don't get what we want, it's often because we haven't developed one or more of these traits. 10 traits might seem daunting, but what's really great about this model is that these traits work really well together. As you develop each of them, it strengthens your capacity to develop others. And we all have the capacity to strengthen all of these traits within ourselves, even the ones we don't feel like we have at all. We can perform simple mental exercises and build these traits like we build muscles, and they'll serve us like muscles, making us strong and functional. So as I describe each of these traits in turn, take a moment and ask yourself, what might be different if I had more of that? Confidence. It's a belief in your inherent value and worthiness, and in your ability to do what you need to do to accomplish what you need to accomplish. It's not about measuring up. It's not about comparison. It's not about being great or even about being good enough. With confidence, there's no self-consciousness. You don't have to be worried about yourself. You can just be. And anyone with low confidence can imagine what a relief that would be. How much energy you'd have available for being in your life rather than monitoring yourself, and how much freedom that would offer. Lack of confidence pretty much precludes flourishing. It sets your own glass ceiling way, way below the surface of your potential, and it kind of ensures stagnation or even withering. Focus is the ability to stay on track despite distractions, to keep your eye on the prize and not to go off course. Our lives today really pull for our being scattered. We're getting input from dozens of directions at all times, plus we find ourselves busy and multitasking. And our involvement with social media has given us attention spans of 140 characters. This is not a recipe for focus. But if there's somewhere you want to go in life, you better strengthen your capacity to pull yourself together and stay on track. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from challenges and setbacks, to get back up after you've been knocked down. It's more than just coping. It's the ability to actually thrive in the face of adversity. And it requires flexibility, commitment, a sense of having control of your life, and enthusiasm for challenge. If you want more from yourself, you have to be willing to take a risk. And if you take a risk, it's likely that you're going to stumble. So you better be able to get back up. People who don't bounce back don't really go anywhere. They stagnate, and they typically lose energy and confidence. Like I said, these traits work really well together. For example, resilience builds confidence, and confidence helps energize resilience. Getting up after we fall down makes us stronger and stronger. And there are so many stories of successful figures from history Thomas Edison, for example, who stumbled over and over again, but kept getting back up before they ultimately succeeded. Just do a web search on successful people who failed, and you'll find dozens of examples of successful people who wouldn't have been successful without resilience. Now, persistence is different than resilience, in that it's not about getting back up when you've fallen down. It's about not getting off in the first place, for any reason. It's not the same as focus either, where you're staying the course despite distractions. Persistence is just staying and staying and staying and staying. It's not getting bored and giving up. It's about the ability to play a long game. And it requires a lot of motivation, because at some point in every journey, the fizzle factor sets in. We start out all energized and enthused, and even if we don't lose focus or get knocked down, we can lose our juice. Success requires persistence. And every strong structure requires flexibility. When you enter a tall building on a windy day, you can sometimes feel the entire building moving. The world is constantly changing. Circumstances are changing. Nothing remains the same. So we need to be adaptable to cope with a changing environment. And we also need flexibility of mind. Sometimes we get stuck in a mindset, and this can shade our mood and our behavior. And sometimes our mindsets can even obscure reality. We need to be able to shift our mindset when it serves us to do so. And I'll be talking more about mind shifts and mindsets later on in this video series. Now, I don't really like the term courage. To me, it implies fearlessness, like a warrior storming into battle. But real people get scared. And sometimes the actions we have to take to make changes in our lives are scary. Sure, it sounds like it would be great to be fearless, but fear is healthy. It's adaptive. It's there to keep us safe. We're hardwired to be fearful so that we could survive in a dangerous world. Now, sometimes we know that in order to get somewhere we want, we'd be best off taking action despite fear. We could wait for courage to show up, or we can learn to be fear-resistant. To, as Susan Jeffers puts it in her best-selling book, to feel the fear and do it anyway. So the way I see it, being fear-resistant allows us to act with bravery and courage. Bravery and courage are the behaviors that result from strengthening our ability to be fear-resistant. Vitality. This gives us juice, energy, to strengthen our other foundational traits and ultimately to take the action we need in order to thrive and flourish. You know, we're talking about building these foundational traits, but we're not talking about just resting on our foundation. We want to use these traits in the service of creating success and fulfillment. That's the whole point. And that takes energy. Vitality is joie de vivre. It's enthusiasm, it's interest, it's playfulness, it's lightness of being. It's not taking things too seriously. And as I mentioned, it gives us the energy to thrive. And it feels good too. Everybody wants more willpower. The well-known researcher Roy Baumeister, who in his book talks about willpower, tells us that in a large-scale study that asked people what's the most important trait they wish they had to make life better, willpower topped the list. Willpower is self-control in the pursuit of a goal. It's using your will to get what you want. And most people say they don't have willpower, but that's just not true. Remember, these traits are like muscles. We all have them, but many people have really weak willpower muscles because willpower happens to be really easily depleted. We might have some, but it sure is easy to use it up. Luckily, like all of these traits, there are simple strategies we can use to strengthen our willpower so we can get what we want. Every one of us can have loads of willpower to use in the service of what's important to us. Equanimity is the ability to stay balanced despite chaos in life. I liken it to the ability to remain calm and grounded in the storm. Chaos sometimes happens. Negative emotions, pain, suffering, struggle. No one gets through this life without some stormy times. When I was a kid, my father used to tell me that life is like a wheel. And sometimes you're on top and sometimes you're on the bottom. And I found that to be pretty inspirational at times when I was down, because I did know that at some point the wheel would turn. It kept me from feeling hopeless. But over the years, I've learned that an even more valuable place to be on the wheel is in the hub, and that's equanimity. Being with the suffering, but not a part of the suffering, not in the suffering. And it requires us to cultivate the ability to be with whatever is happening, no matter how unpleasant. Equanimity helps us to respond to life thoughtfully rather than to just be reactive and reflexive all the time. So that in a way, equanimity allows us to get out of unhelpful patterns, and it allows our suffering to be less painful. It gives us a little buffer. Now, wisdom, it's kind of the mother of all of these foundational traits, isn't it? When we talk about someone who has wisdom, we aren't talking about intelligence or even street smarts. We're talking about a person who has a way of integrating their intelligence with their social skills and with whatever is happening in life to see the big picture, to make flexible and thoughtful choices. Wisdom is having perspective. It's being open-minded and self-aware. Like equanimity, wisdom is not about getting caught up in the storms of life, but wisdom is about finding your true self, while equanimity is more about finding balance. So as I wind down for today, I want to offer you an opportunity for reflection. As I describe these 10 traits, perhaps one or even a few of them struck you as something you could use some more of. Probably some struck you more than others. So here's a little exercise for you. For each of these traits, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 as to whether you feel like you embody that characteristic or not. This will help you to see where you have an opportunity to strengthen your foundation. Also, think about a time in your life where you were successful at something, where you accomplished something that you're proud of or met a hefty challenge. Which of these traits came in handy for you in that situation? And also, think about a time where maybe you didn't accomplish something. If there's a challenge you didn't meet, or a regret or a disappointment, a situation where you didn't do as well as you had wished. Which one of these resources could have made a difference for you, either in that circumstance or in coping with that circumstance? Now check your email tomorrow for the next video in this series that continues to explore the anatomy of successful and fulfilled living. Tomorrow, we'll consider the attitudes that support our foundation, and we'll also talk about how our Positivitree flourishes with the support of this foundation. So bye now.